The Shark Deck.
Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. I haven't done Late Bot in a while, but from the Late Bot, Rupert Murdoch has decided to retire. Fox News is planning a tribute. It's called The Retirement Hoax. Is Rupert really leaving, or is this just liberal fake news? Another version of the joke that I think is better. Rupert Murdoch is stepping down. It's the end of an era, or as Fox News would report it, breaking news. Rupert Murdoch retires, blames Hillary Clinton. Jon Stewart was on the Strike Force 5 podcast. He said, I want to make one thing clear off the bat. Not a fan of the podcast. Tried to get through the first one. Not a fan. The discussion amongst the group. What was it like the first time you were on TV? Jon Stewart said his guest was Howard Stern. It must have been 10 seconds in when he explained to me pretty accurately why I would be canceled in the upcoming future. Nailed it. Kind of put everybody in their place for the thing and then sat back and said, what do you have to say now? So it was a suspicious beginning. We learned that Jon Stewart is listed as Doofus in Stephen Colbert's phone. They consider each other a best friend, but they only see each other once a year because Stewart is antisocial. Jon Stewart talked about hiring John Oliver at The Daily Show and said, rarely do you see a tape and go, that guy. And that was one of those with John. He was so clearly great. And then we found out that he needed a green card. And first bid in, we sent him down to Civil War reenactors and he broke his nose. Oliver confirmed the story and said it was a Civil War reenactment. And I believe I was fighting for the North. And so the bit was before they said go, because I believe that's how the Civil War began, I would run ahead of them as fast as I can at the other army. And I did that. And then I was running literally as fast as I possibly could. It was quite wet underfoot and I was wearing dress shoes. And then I fell forward. I realized there was a musket in my hand. And so I got out of the way. Face planted, there was blood all over my face, and I knew I'd come to work at the right office when we got back, and there was still laughter echoing around the office. That's great. They did not discuss Jimmy Fallon Gate. I don't know if they ever will. The Dallas News caught up with Ralph Barbosa. Keep an eye on Ralph. Ralph said, I think growing up with like half my friends being nerdy gamer type dudes, that helped me stay true to who I am and not try to fake it. But it also helped when I was trying to fake it and I was hanging around with more like of the troublemakers. Once I started getting into actual trouble and made me realize exactly who I was. If I was hanging around the dangerous type kids to avoid fights or any kind of trouble, I usually try to make everybody laugh to kind of keep things cool. When I was hanging around the nerdy typers, I just felt more at home. It was easy to crack jokes and they usually got my jokes a little better. The Dallas News asked Ralph Barbosa about expressing his frustration with more seasoned comedians, saying younger comedians have it easy now. Possibly George Lopez. Who knows? I don't know what it was like for them coming up. I'm sure it was tough. I hear crazy stories, and I'm sure it was really tough. I know it could probably make them angry to see somebody do a video of them just doing crowd work, talking to the crowd, and it blows up, and then that person selling tickets, whatever. I'm seeing more and more stuff about comedians hating on crowd work videos. It's really interesting. There's a thing with Gary Gullman commenting on that in upcoming days. Really interesting. Barbosa said, but I also think they shouldn't be disregarded that a lot of comics who are able to make a career from their videos or clips going viral online is that these comics are still performing, still writing. The internet has been a helping hand for comics. TikTok, Instagram, all that. But it also puts me into another gear. If I'm going to open up the gates to more views, it's going to be easier for people to access my material. That means I have to pump out way more material. Whereas the comics from years ago, they could be doing the same jokes for years and years and years as their career grew. I could have gone that route, and I would have gone that route. I would have gone any route it would have taken to get to where I am. But this was the route that worked, and this is the route that I'll keep working at. Nish Kumar has claimed that Russell Brand's reputation for being a sex predator has been an open secret in British comedy since 2018. This from the Daily Mail. Kumar said it was discussed by multiple comedians in Edinburgh Fringe shows the following year in 2018. It was well known. To be completely honest with you, the story that I heard was relating to a sexual assault, and it wasn't covered in the documentary. Those weren't the stories I'd actually heard about. So it's possible that there's more allegations to come. I think if you look at Russell Brand's IMDb page, you'll see that his television work in Britain starts to dry up around 2018, 2019. That's simply because increasingly people were just not willing to work with him. This stuff is still happening. There are still people working in comedy who are the subject of open secrets. There are still people who work in comedy that we can't name because, again, the threat of lawsuits. And there are still people working comedy who people will say, oh, we don't send young women into their dressing rooms. The only people that come out of this with any credibility are the victims who have been brave enough to step forward and the journalists who have worked extremely hard to produce rigorous pieces of journalism so they could get around the threats of a very powerful man's lawyers. And until we start asking ourselves the hard questions, we're never, ever going to get progress out of this. Until men start asking the hard questions about how we conduct ourselves, until people in powerful positions start asking questions about why they're indulging the whims of predators and monsters, till any of that happens, nothing is going to change. Vulture asked Gary Gullman why he wrote a book. Gary said, revenge. When I gave my mother the book, she immediately started scanning it for her name and mom and mother. She'll call me and say, well, that's not who I am. My wife is so helpful in these things. She said, Barbara, this book is full of quirky things about you that people are going to love. You'll notice it's not titled Surviving Barbara Gullman. It's not really about you, and he loves you. Gullman said, that's the joke answer. The real answer is that I love books, and I've always wanted to write a book. I've always heard these stories I wanted to tell as my life as a child. I remember so vividly. I love to tell these stories with an elevated voice, like they were so important. Like there was a late library book that takes up 4 or 5 pages, and it was this traumatic experience. It's sort of an extension of our stand-up. Gullman said he listened to Maria Bamford's book and said, I want to get this out there. I was blown away, and also, I'm so grateful I didn't come across it before I wrote my own, because I would have retired. Maria Bamford's book is so good, which is a high compliment from comedians to say that it made you feel bad about yourself. Still more to be mined from Kara Swisher's fantastic interview with Conan O'Brien. If you haven't heard that, that's on Kara Swisher's podcast. Kara was curious about the role of the interviewer, using the term the platonic interviewer. Conan said, people go in with different agendas when they interview. I've always tried to figure out, especially back when I was in the volume business game, where you're talking to 3 people a night, 5 nights a week, and very few vacations. You're talking to a lot of people, and people are coming through that you might not naturally be interested in. I'm a curious person, and I would try to find out, what am I really curious about with this person? What drives a conversation is, what are you curious about? As I moved on to the podcast, I talked to fewer people, and they're almost universally people that I really want to talk to. I'm very fortunate that way. But I'm still always fascinated by all these skills people have that I don't have, and all these things people can do that I can't do, and I want to know about that. Conan said, I really do like to connect with people. I really want to make that connection, that drive to make that connection. And I do this. I'll chat with people on the street or in a restaurant for a very long time, and I'll ask them about themselves to a point where it's so ridiculous they say, look, Conan, I just wanted to get a selfie. I have to go. Kara was curious, who is Conan's worst guest? Conan said, well, I hate to put it on them, but it was really early on, and I just didn't have the chops yet. It was like 1993, and we had Eartha Kitt on the show. And I'd say, now you worked with James Dean. And she'd say, well, what do you care about that? She was very challenging and provocative. And I think if I had more seasoning, which I got quickly, but I didn't have it then, I would have been able to turn that on its head and had fun with it. But I wasn't able to. And it wasn't just not good for her. And it was not good for me. And I remembered after that interview thinking, that was bad. That was really bad. At first, I was very knee-jerk thinking, why was she so difficult? And then realizing, no, it's an opportunity. It was an opportunity. I just wasn't there yet. I just got out on the court and I tried to make a 3-point shot and it went into the audience and it killed a little boy. Johnny Mac, did you just laugh at killing a little boy? Conan was making up a story. No little boy was actually killed. That's what makes it funny. Looks like Bill Maher and Howard Stern aren't going to be friends again. Bill Maher made some comments about Howard Stern's second marriage. On his podcast, Bill Maher said, how does this gushing about the second wife, how does that make the first wife feel? Could we just not gush about the person while the other person can still hear it? Howard Stern commented on his satellite radio program and said, what a sexist thing to say. Like, what a convoluted, nutty thing to say. It's assuming that he knows something about my first marriage, that of course the man must be leaving the woman and the woman must be devastated and be sitting around pining away for her famous man. Kevin Hart always out there hustling, making money, doing business deals. A new one with Proximo Spirits. They've been named the official luxury tequila of the Philadelphia Eagles. Kevin Hart put out a statement that said, as a diehard Philadelphia Eagles fan, this partnership marries 2 of my biggest passions, football and tequila. Last year, I surprised fans with an eagle to bring luck to my team, but this year I had to kick it up a notch. My tequila brand has signed a multi-year partnership that brings the Eagles and Gran Carmino together. The Eagles are stuck with me now. Let's see what's happening at JFL Toronto tonight. 7 o'clock, Mark Forward, Safari Time, Neil Brennan's Brand New Neil, Dulce Sloan at 7, Second City again, Andrea Jin again, Ronnie Cheng again, Jay Jordan again, 7:45, Queerly Canadian, 8 o'clock, Double Threat, Rachel Manson and Clifton Cremo, 8 o'clock, Best of Absolute Comedy, 8:30, The Nubian Show, 9 o'clock, I Hate People, People Hate Me, a special screening event with Bobby Summers. This offbeat scripted comedy explores 2 friends' lives as they navigate as underdogs in Toronto's queer community. Patty Harrison at 9. Double Threat, Hassan Fils and Malik El-Assal at 9. Pretty robust for a Sunday, isn't this? 9:15, Jink X Monsoon. 9:30, Trinidad versus Jamaica Comedy Clash. I'm intrigued. For 20 years, this consistently sold-out comedy clash is always a fun favorite. The gloves are coming out with the heavy hitters of laughter, hosted by Jay Morton and Jean Paul. The Trinidad vs. Jamaica Comedy Clash is a clean comedy show in honor of all mothers, especially ones from Africa and the Caribbean. I'm going to definitely put that on our list for tonight. Jay Jordan at 10, 11 o'clock, Allison Liebley, The Alternative Show, Gavin Matz at 11, and Midnight Madness. All right, if you and I were there, what would we do? 7 o'clock, I think we've already hypothetically seen Neil Brennan. Let's go see Andrea Ginn. 8 o'clock. Let's do Double Threat, Rachel Manson and Clifton Cremo. I don't think we've done that one yet. I definitely want to do Trinidad versus Jamaica at 9:30. And do we have to do an 11 o'clock show? Can I just go to bed? No, you're going to make me hang out with you? All right, Gavin Matz will do it at 11 o'clock. I've never seen Gavin, so that'll be something different. And that is your comedy news for today. I'm still on a mission. You're going to tell your friends, hey, do you like podcasts? There's this one where this guy reads comedy schedules to us. That's the dumb part. That's like the last 5 minutes. But at the beginning of the show, he tells you like the latest comedy news, and I kind of like the podcast. You're going to tell your friends something like that. See you tomorrow.